Welcome to Spooky Ass Shit. I am your host, Eric Dwinnells, and with me tonight, returning once again, my guest co-host, Tom Cole. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, Eric. I feel like a radio guy with that entry.
Yeah, well, you always give some kind of big entrance.
I try. Why? I don't want every time I'm on here like, hey, Eric.
Yeah.
How's it going? Hey.
That's my job, to be the...
Yeah, you're the rock. You're the mellow one. I'm just here. I'm the color commentary.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, so actually this technically is the first episode of Spooky Ass Shit Season 2.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. We just had our birthday show last week.
Oh, yeah. 1 full year.
That's right.
Look where you come. You came from about having, 2 listeners, which were, you and your guest.
Yeah,
to
there were...
more than that.
I looked it up. There were 9 downloads of... total during the first week, with 3 episodes released at the same time.
Right, and you knew the first name of each person who downloaded.
Well, probably I was at least 4 of them.
You're right.
And possibly even all of them.
It could be.
Because I was testing things, not because I'm like an egomaniac, but because I was trying to see, like, what happens if I click it here? What happens if I click it over here? So Tom, should we get into our subject for today?
Yeah, let's get into the spooky-ass subject.
Tom, I'm sure that you have heard about an alleged board game.
Oh, yes?
Called the Ouija Board, or
Ouija?
The Ouija Board.
Oh.
Apparently, both pronunciations are acceptable.
All right. Yeah, I've heard. I've heard once or twice.
I always grew up saying the Ouija Board.
I always did too.
But when you look at the spelling, it clearly should be pronounced Ouija.
Yeah, actually, when I was doing research for this episode, I typed in Ouija because I haven't seen a Ouija board in a long time. So I typed in Ouija board, and I did OUJI, and Google said, "Oh, you mean OUJA? You fucking idiot!"
Yeah, and there's a rumor that it's from the French word for yes and the German word for yes combined.
Yeah,
Ouija. That's false. We're going to get into all that later, but we're going to say it right off the bat. That's false. So I'm probably going to call it the Ouija board just because that's what I've grown up calling it, even though, I mean, both pronunciations are acceptable. But
yeah, I've always known Ouija, and it's OUIJA.
Correct.
OUIJA. So I just can't spell.
Now, did you own a Ouija board growing up ever?
I didn't, and in my household, but my cousins did, and it was always fun to go to their house, and sometimes we would have sleepovers with my cousin. We would break it out.
So you've used a Ouija board before?
You bet your bippy I have.
Yeah. I think the same thing. I don't remember owning one specifically, but I think my cousin also had one. Yeah. And we did use it, but I definitely moved it like on purpose.
Oh, I mean, come on.
I wasn't even waiting for
scientific
explanations,
absolutely,
which we'll get into later, but I was just moving it on purpose.
Yeah, I was messing. Especially with my younger cousins, I would totally mess with them. Yeah.
So we're going to go through kind of the history of the board and the controversies related to the board,
right,
and some of the crimes and some of the paranormal stuff that you hear about the board. I got to warn everybody, it's going to take a little while before it gets spooky. Right. We're going to talk about the history and the business aspect of it.
Yeah.
And we want to give you all that first, and then we're going to get into the spooky stuff.
Right.
So just be prepared. The Ouija board, for anyone who doesn't know, is basically just a cardboard board, normally, although back in the day it was wooden, with the words yes and no at the top, the alphabet across the middle, numbers underneath the alphabet, 1 through 9 and then a 0, and then underneath that, the word goodbye. That's your standard
that's a standard setup.
You also get what's called a planchette, which is like the teardrop pointy thing, which usually has a hole in the middle.
Right, a window of some sort in the middle.
So you place your fingers on it, and you make a circle a couple times around the board, although I don't believe that's in the official rules, but most people do that. Then you ask the board a question, and the board appears to answer you. Now, they don't explain, when I say they, I mean the makers of the board, no matter who they were, don't explain how the board works.
Nope.
But essentially, you're supposed to believe it's spirits.
Exactly.
So that is, in a nutshell, the Ouija board. The Ouija board that, as we know it today, was patented in 1891
Yes.
by Elijah Bond of Maryland.
Yep.
And Ouija has become synonymous with talking boards, which is what these kind of boards were known as. But even though that's kind of like just like a Kleenex now is what we call a tissue, or a Xerox is a copy, or something like. I don't think anyone says Xerox anymore, but
Band-Aid.
There you go.
Same thing.
That kind of thing. So when you talk about a Ouija board, that really could be any talking board, as they used to call it. And the history of the talking board actually goes back further.
Oh, sure, to the early 1800s.
1891, even further.
Yeah. Oh, really?
To something called automatic writing.
Oh, man.
Now, automatic writing is supposed to be the psychic ability that allows a person to produce written words without consciously getting pen and paper and writing them.
Sure.
This is still used today by some TV psychics. You see them sitting there and they scribble.
Yeah.
That's a scribbling sound effect on a piece of paper until they get words or an answer to a question. Even today, they still use that. Now, they claim that the words are not written by themselves, but it's a spirit
guiding
or some kind of supernatural power guiding their hand.
Yep.
Now, China added a twist to the automatic writing.
They always add twists to everything.
Because we have historical documents from China's Song dynasty, which, of course, as you know, was from 960 to 1279.
Of course.
Common Era. And those documents show the first known use of the planchette to point to letters and form words. This was known as Fuji, or planchette writing. It was considered a form of necromancy, which is basically magic assisted by
the
dead spirits. And it was used by certain branches of Taoism until it was outlawed sometime after 1644. Now, there are some historians who suggest that planchette writing, essentially talking boards, could also have been used in ancient India and other countries in Europe, Greece, Rome, that kind of thing. But we don't have any official documented proof. So China is the first. It wasn't a Ouija board exactly, but it was something along the same kind of lines. Something happens in the mid-1800s.
Okay, what happens?
Enter the Fox sisters.
Ah, snap.
Which I know you know all about.
I know we do.
Because we have covered this on a previous episode, and it's a very popular episode, actually.
Yeah, it's a very interesting episode. So the Fox sisters, they took North America by storm. They introduced a thing called spiritualism to...
completely accidentally, too.
Yeah, right, absolutely.
They didn't set out to do this.
No, they just did it.
But they claimed that they were getting messages from spirits through knockings and rappings and stuff like that throughout their house.
Yeah.
And people then began to find their own ways to communicate with spirits, and it took off, like you said, became like a big national thing.
Absolutely. And one thing that I read, and one of the reasons why spiritualism really took off, and then, kind of the Ouija board later, is that you gotta think in the time, the life expectancy was less than 50 years at this point. So, I mean, everyone has a whole slew of family members or friends or whoever that
and not to mention
are dead.
The Civil War happens during this time.
Right, exactly. So life expectancy is not long at all. So so many dead people, and you still want to connect with them. So people were always looking for a way to connect with people in the next life. And we're going to cover it later, but one of the reasons why the Ouija board took off is because, not only did people want to connect with dead folks, their dead spirits or their dead relatives, whoever, but they wanted to do it quickly, and the Ouija board provided pretty much instant gratification for them. Yeah. They didn't, want to wait for a whole ceremony to be like, oh my God, Fox sisters, will you hurry this up? No, Ouija board, they control it, kind of. Whether they know it or not, and they're getting results right away. Yeah,
so the first recorded use of a talking board in America is in 1868. There's a very early Associated Press article about a group in Chicago using this talking board.
Yes.
But a shrewd businessman in Maryland
Yep.
gets an idea.
Charles Kennard.
Correct. He says, wait a minute. People really seem to be responding to this board and going crazy for it.
Yep.
And it seems like it's not like they in the article they explain how to make a board. And he said, I think I could make a board, patent it, and then sell it and make millions of dollars.
Right, absolutely.
And as you said, his name was
Charles Kennard. So what he did, he collected a group of people he knew in some key position. I think he made friends in like a patent office.
He had a patent lawyer.
He had a patent lawyer. So he found a group of people who set out for this business venture, and they all kind of they collected their resources and.
Oh, hold on! I just want to mention.
Sure.
They were all Freemasons.
Yes, they were actually. You're right.
Just mentioning that.
You're absolutely
for the
right.
Illuminati-minded of you out there. They were all Freemasons.
They're all Freemasons. Yep. So they all got together and created the Kennard Novelty Company, and it's actually said that Kennard got his name on it because he had the plot of land in the building where they first made.
And I don't, who knows what really happened, but it's from the way it's reported.
Yep.
Online anyway. Which who knows, again, how accurate that is. But it was kind of his idea.
Right.
So it seems like Charles Kennard was like the driving force behind everything. And the whole point, the only point of this Kennard Novelty Company was to sell what would become the Ouija board. There was no other products in line. So the investors did not necessarily believe that spirits were speaking through the board. They just knew that there was a market for these kinds of talking boards and knew how to make this kind of product.
Absolutely. And they're just shrewd businessmen. And in fact, even when they went to submit the patent.
Oh, I got that whole
story. Oh, you have
right
that story? Do you want to tell the patent story?
Well, the investors made prototypes.
Yeah.
And they tested them, and they were delighted to see that the planchette honestly, really, 100% did truly seem to be moving on its own. They also, Elijah Bond, who was the lawyer of the group, he's one of the investors, but he was the patent lawyer. He was not officially a member of the Kennard Company, but he was the lawyer and a patent lawyer, so he was going to help them get this whole thing rolling. He had a sister-in-law by the name of Helen Peters.
Oh, good old Helen.
Who claimed to be a spiritualist medium.
Yes, a strong medium, as they describe her.
So he said, hey, come over, help us use this board that we've made. So she comes over, and they demonstrate it to each other, and they're all satisfied with the board. Also, this is when the board gets its name. This is the
Ouija.
True story.
Yeah.
I say that with quotations around it. They say that they asked the board what they should call it, and the board spelled out Ouija. And they said, oh, what does that mean? And the board said, good luck.
Yep.
Now, we don't know if the board is saying that Ouija means good luck, or if it's saying, hey, good luck trying to figure it out, or I'm done talking with you guys, good luck with your board, peace out. Who knows?
But the true story of the fact, though, is that Peters, she was wearing a locket with the image of a woman on it, and the woman on it she was a very active women's right activist.
She was, yes, and she was also a novelist.
Yes, correct.
From Britain.
Yep.
And her real name was Maria Louise Ramey, but her pen name was Ouida. Ouida.
And if you look at Ouida quickly, it looks like Ouija.
Or Ouija.
Ouija.
Yeah. So, who knows what the true story is there?
Yeah, I mean, we'll let you make your own judgment on that one.
But the investors were happy enough. Elijah Bond, the lawyer, thought that this would be a good, catchy name for the board. And he was also, like I said, the patent attorney.
Yep.
So he was ideally suited to present the prototype Ouija board to the U.S. Patent Office. Knowing that he'd have to perform a proper demonstration in order to be granted the patent, he asked his sister-in-law, Medium Peters, to once again join him in demonstrating the board. Now, the chief patent officer said he would file the patent if...
It worked.
Correct. If Bond and Peters could prove that the board worked as they claimed.
Right. Yeah.
He demanded that they use the board to spell out his name, which he had not yet told them. The three sat down, and the planchette correctly spelled out the patent officer's name. So, on February 10th, 1891, Elijah Bond was granted a patent for the Ouija board game.
Yeah, and people have gone back into the patent, and the first patent for the Ouija board, it does not give any explanation how it works. It just says that it does work. And in fact, the group of businessmen even later said, ultimately, it's just a moneymaker. They said they don't care why people thought it worked as long as people thinks it works.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing, too, is now you wonder, well, how did they spell out the name of the patent chief?
Yeah.
Well, who knows for sure? Who's to say the story isn't apocryphal to begin with?
Sure.
But if it is true, and it happens exactly as described,
Yeah.
well, let's not forget that Elijah Bond was a patent lawyer, so he may have just happened to have known the chief patent officer's name.
Of course, yeah.
Even if he hadn't necessarily been introduced to the man himself before.
And they probably went to this man's office. And usually when you go to someone's office, you know who you're going to meet with.
Oh, I would love it if the name was just on the door.
Yeah, right.
And the guy just forgot.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because he usually puts his coat over it or something, and he just wasn't thinking. Who knows?
Well, anyways, he was, we won't say that he was duped, but the Ouija board came through and spelled his name.
Yes. So they got the patent, and as you said, patent doesn't explain how it works, just out there. The original advertisements declared it a link between the known and the unknown, the material and the immaterial, and called it a never-failing amusement. Its original price was $1.50. To be honest with you, that's still about what it should be worth today.
Oh, yeah. That seems like a lot of money back then.
It probably was back then. Today, they charge you about $20 for one.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's literally a piece of cardboard with a piece of plastic.
You could write with a marker, and it would be the same.
Yeah. But back in 1891, this board was a huge hit, and the money came rolling in.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, of course, once that happens, it doesn't take long before disputes begin to arise.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's one gentleman in the group. He actually started in the company as a small investor, and he was mainly just an employee of the group. His name was William Fold. So eventually, he and Bond and one other gentleman, they kick all the other investors out of the group. They kick Kennard out of the Kennard Novelty Group, or the Kennard Novelty Company. So they kept the name Kennard Novelty Company with just the three of them without Kennard.
Yeah.
And then Kennard, Charles Kennard, he's like, all right, I'm out of the group, but I have this great idea. This was my idea to begin with. So he starts creating knockoffs. And then the Kennard Novelty Company, which Charles Kennard was not a part of, sued Charles Kennard and told him to stop all his activities. Imagine that.
Business people are always assholes, it seems like.
Yeah. So this guy William Fold, he ended up taking over everything. He bought it for $1 at one point, the company.
Yeah, because one of the investors owned the majority share, and he liked this guy, and he was kind of his protege.
Exactly. So then William Fold, he needed, they were beefing up all their production, and he got his brother, I believe his name was Isaac. He got his brother Isaac Fold to help with production, and that lasted a little while. They actually had a 3-year agreement, and then William Fold like, no, this isn't working so well. I don't like working with you. You're kind of a dick. So they split up, and then for the rest of Isaac's life, which was I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, but into I believe the 1920s, they just had constant legal battles between William Fuld and his brother Isaac Fuld, where William Fuld had the Ouija board, and Isaac Fuld had just about 50 knockoffs.
Yeah.
And just nonstop, they were just suing each other. It was until one of them and both of them died.
Oh boy.
So that family got ruined forever.
Yeah. Well, again, this is the beginning, perhaps, of the curse of the Ouija board.
Yeah. Yeah.
Starting with its founders. Now, interestingly enough, Fold. How are you saying it? You're saying flood, right? But it's
Fold.
Fold.
I said Fold.
Okay, I believe you.
I mumble, so it might have come out flood.
Fold died after falling off the roof of a new factory that he was overseeing being built.
And the factory was built because he claimed the Ouija board said he should build that factory.
Yes. That could be bullshit, but
oh, total.
That is listed.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish every board of directors at every Fortune 500 company, it just had a Ouija board in the middle.
Now, Parker Brothers.
Yeah. Now
Hasbro.
Local
Massachusetts company.
Yep.
Bought the rights to the board in 1967.
Yes.
It sold over 2 million boards in that year alone. And then in 1991, Parker Brothers was bought out by Hasbro, so now Hasbro is still releasing the Ouija board, and it's sold at all major retailers, including Walmart.
Yep.
And Toys R Us. And like I said, selling for about $20, which is a bit steep for what you actually get in the box. But
yeah, you get cardboard and a little bit of plastic.
Yeah. Now, the main thing to keep in mind is the spirit boards, talking boards, Ouija boards, they were really considered kind of a parlor game. It wasn't a big deal. People may or may not have believed they were actually talking to spirits.
Yeah.
But most people, with some exceptions,
Sure.
Didn't believe there was anything dangerous or scary, really, about the board, aside from the fact that it was a little freaky that the thing seemed to move
creepy.
on its own. But it was more like harmless, fun kind of stuff.
Sure.
Until 1973. The movie The Exorcist. Considered by many to be the scariest movie of all time.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true, but it's definitely a very good movie and one of my favorites.
Excellent. And it holds up.
Yeah. Now, in this movie, there was a young girl named Regan who plays with a Ouija board and begins to communicate with a spirit who calls itself Captain Howdy.
Yes.
That spirit is actually a demon named Pazuzu who possesses Regan.
Yep.
And that's really what the movie is about from then on. Then they have to call a priest to get her exorcised, but that's where it starts. She opens this porthole for the demon to come into her life.
Yeah, right.
By using the Ouija board.
Yes.
Now this is when people start to lose their shit about the Ouija board, and it's seen in a whole new light. Many Christian groups consider the board to be a tool of the devil.
Get out.
But actually, the Bible supports this theory.
Does it really? How so?
Leviticus chapter 19, verse 31. Do not turn to mediums or seek out spirits, for you will be defiled by them. Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 10 through 12. This is sort of paraphrased. I cut out some unimportant bits.
Yeah.
Let no one be found among you who is a medium or a spiritist or who consults with the dead. Anyone who does these things is detestable to the Lord. The Bible also states that when somebody dies, they go on to judgment.
Okay.
They either go into eternal happiness in heaven
or damnation,
or they are sent to hell. So the Bible does not support a belief in ghosts. There's no spirits of living people walking around.
Right.
If you are seeing the form of somebody who has passed on, according to Christian
ideology.
Thank you. You are actually seeing a demon in disguise.
Right.
So if you are talking to a friendly spirit using the Ouija board, you are actually talking to a demon.
Of course, yeah.
So I'm not saying that's true, but at least they can back it up with their damn book.
Actually, the logic, I guess, I get.
Yeah.
using their logic, I see that.
The Christians get some support from a group that you might not suspect
The
would
Jews.
support the Christians. No. Occultist.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Witches. Fortune tellers.
Yeah.
All of these kinds of people.
Why were they on the same team?
Many occultists warn against the use of the Ouija board, saying, much as the Christians do, that it can easily open the door for demons or other evil spirits. So it should not be handled by amateurs, only professionals. Now, of course, the question is, are they saying that because they want people to keep coming to them and not have a home definition?
I'm going to stop you, and the answer is yes. But keep going.
But I will tell you this. I work with a woman who is a witch by religion, a Wiccan.
Yeah, you've mentioned that, yeah.
And I have a Ouija board in front of us today.
Sure.
I borrowed it, actually, from the library.
Oh, I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, you can borrow. Some libraries have Ouija boards you can borrow.
Oh, cool.
And I said, hey, look what I got from the library. She literally jumped back.
Really?
And was like looking at it all cross-eyed. And she was like, you need to be very careful. And I was like, bitch, please. But she was like, no. She's like, I'm just going to say this. I was like, what, are demons? You're afraid demons are going to get me?
Yeah.
And she's like, not necessarily, but I will say this. Those attract a very baseline kind of energy.
Okay.
And that kind of energy is usually not from a good source.
Okay.
So.
Interesting.
If we use this board, Tom, just be prepared. We might be possessed by demons.
Oh.
Or at least welcome demons into our lives.
Oh, okay.
She said, just make sure nothing attaches itself to you. And I said, don't worry, I'm not a commitment guy. I will tell it, look, you can spend the night.
Yeah.
After that, you
gotta
get
go.
the fuck out. I didn't write them down, but I do advise, if you're into Ouija boards, I do advise you to go either on Amazon or on Toys R Us and check out the customer reviews. Now, there's people trying to be funny and be like, oh, this is great if you want your daughter to speak in a different language and turn her head around. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, we get it.
You know, I asked the spirit to give me a blowjob, and all it gave me was a handy, or, you know, like whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. But then there's people who are earnestly warning you about the dangers of using a Ouija board, and those can be fun to read.
Of course.
You know what's going to happen, Tom. We're kind of mocking this stuff.
A little bit, yeah.
You're going to die in a car accident when you go home.
Oh, good. Thank you.
After using the board.
Yeah.
And something terrible is going to happen to me as well. And everyone's going to be like, they used the board and this is what happened.
The last thing they left behind was this podcast.
Yeah. Well, if that happens, just know, at least we're part of history now.
Oh, good.
So the next time someone does a podcast
so maybe
about
I was
Ouija
just going to
boards,
say if someone would do a spooky-ass podcast
they'll
about
play
us.
this audio.
Bam!
Are you ready to get into some spooky-ass shit about the Ouija boards?
I've been waiting all time.
Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to mention the paranormal haunting stories.
Okay, do it.
But we're not really going to delve into them. Because quote-unquote true stories are hard to find. Off the top of my head, I could be wrong, but I can't think of any major cases that start off with they were using a Ouija board. It's possible.
Yeah, it's probably out there somewhere.
I'm sure there are stories.
Yeah.
But I can't think of like any well-known cases that start that way. But there are, if you want to look up stories online, there are plenty of stories of, you know, Ouija board mishaps.
Right.
And plenty of YouTube videos. Ouija board challenge. Just look up that. And they're all, every one that I saw was stupid. I couldn't even get through them. Even the ones like by established YouTubers and stuff, I couldn't get through them. I was just like, okay, all right, fine. So good luck with that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the theory is spirits or demons can come through. They could lie to you, and you know, we kind of already covered it.
Yeah, we got it.
There's not really much more to add. However, much more terrifying, there are real-world crimes that have been committed with the aid or inspiration of the Ouija board.
Sure has.
Now, you can find a lot more. I'm just going to give you some highlights because we're running out of time.
Right.
So I'm just going to give you a couple, and then people can look up more if they want.
Right.
But how about this one? November 8th, 1933. Dorothea Turley is using a Ouija board with her 15-year-old daughter, Maddie. The planchette spells out a message encouraging Maddie to kill her father, which, it suggests, would then free her mother, Dorothea, to marry a handsome young cowboy. Isn't that nice of the board?
That is nice. Yeah.
It's like, look, you got to do this, but it's for your mom to find a new love.
Yeah.
Dorothea told Maddie, the board cannot be denied. That's a quote. Perhaps fearing her mother and the board, Maddie snuck up behind her father and shot him twice in the back. He survived for a couple weeks, actually, but he eventually died from his wounds. Maddie confessed and was sentenced to reform school until she turned 18. Mother Dorothea was tried, found guilty, and sentenced to 10 to 25 years, but her conviction was overturned by the Supreme Court, and she was released in 1936 after only a couple years. No word if she ever married that handsome cowboy or not.
We can only hope that she did.
I mean, she did go to extremes to make herself available.
Yeah. I hope she followed through.
Now, this one is a little strange, but I thought I'd include it because I thought the story was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Gilmore. He's a convicted murderer in the 70s, and he's actually more famous, not so much for the murders that he committed, because he wasn't like a serial killer. He just killed a couple guys during a robbery.
Right.
But he requested to be executed, and he requested to be executed by firing squad.
Oh, okay.
And as far as I know, he's the last person to be executed that way. I could be wrong. I don't know. According to his brother, their mother, Bessie, was convinced that she had made contact with a demon as a child while using a Ouija board, and that the demon attached itself to the family. He claims that Bessie was awoken one night by the feeling that something was touching her face. When she opened her eyes, she saw a terrifying demon lying in bed next to her. She ran out of the room in a panic and went to gather her children so they could flee the house. When she entered the children's room, she again saw this demonic figure staring into the eyes of her young son, Gary. They fled the house, but Gary became troubled after that, and he eventually became a murderer.
Oh.
Bessie reportedly believed that Gary had been possessed by the demon that she contacted via the Ouija board, and that is what made him such an angry and violent person. Now, I mean, of course, I have my doubts whether the whole story is true.
Sure.
But I have my doubts as to if the brother even heard the story from Mother Bessie in the first place. Because don't forget, this is coming from a book that he wrote shortly after his brother was executed. The name of the book, by the way, Shot Through the Heart.
All right.
So I don't know if it's the most reliable.
I'd say probably not.
Of the life of the Gilmore brothers. How about this one? December 2007. 16-year-old Joshua Tucker and 15-year-old Donald Shalgan, I don't know about that last name, were using a Ouija board. They asked it if they should become serial killers, as you do. The board answered yes. They asked who they should kill first, and the board said, Mom. The two boys began drinking alcohol and cough syrup in
mix.
In Donald's home. His 13-year-old sister, Elizabeth, was at home as well. She was talking on the phone when Joshua suddenly took out a knife and started stabbing Elizabeth in the throat. The two boys hid the body and tried to clean up the crime scene. Shortly after, however, Donald's mother, Lori, arrived on the scene, and Joshua attacked her as well. She fought him off long enough to call 911, but he continued to attack her. His knife broke during the attack, so Donald handed him a dumbbell and a butcher knife. Using these tools, Joshua finished the job. Knowing the police would be there soon, Joshua and Donald attempted to flee, but were arrested a short time later. Both of the boys were covered in blood. Donald was sentenced to 9.5 years, and Joshua to 41 years.
Jesus.
So, scary things can happen with the Ouija board. But there's also some lighter anecdotes involving the Ouija board. First of all, several writers, too many to name, but again, look them up if you're interested, have used the Ouija board as kind of a writing prompt. But most of them don't claim that spirits actually, wrote the book for them or something. Right. There are a couple that do that. One woman did claim that, and guess who she claimed the spirit was?
Who?
Mark Twain.
Oh, of course.
So Mark Twain was back at it again.
Oh, good.
This woman.
Well, I hope he got a writing credit on it.
Yeah, well, it must have been a shitty book because I'd never heard of it. I know most of his books. But the other writers who at least use the board, maybe not necessarily for spiritual demonstrations, but for writing prompts, include Sylvia Plath and Pulitzer Prize winner James Merrill.
Oh, get out.
Also, my close personal friend, Alice Cooper, has claimed that he got his name by using a Ouija board. The Ouija board told him to name himself Alice Cooper.
Oh, get out. That's interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah. Well, it's probably not true.
Yeah.
He was probably just saying some bullshit.
Alice Cooper would never make anything up.
Yeah. Well, he did sign my guitar. So
that's worth something.
He's all good with me.
Yeah.
Vincent, Alice, whatever you want to call him.
Coop.
He's good with me. Now, the big question is, how does the Ouija board work? Because, honestly, skeptic or not, if you put your hands on the Ouija board, the planchette, might move without you consciously moving the piece around.
Right.
So how does it work? Well, first of all, there's the paranormal ideas that we've already discussed, which are that they're spirits communicating with you, or they could be demons.
Right. Something's moving it.
Right. But the scientific and
probably the accurate,
the real answer is something called the ideomotor response.
Yes.
Are you able to explain this in layman's terms, young Thomas?
Yeah. I mean, everyone, you have actions that are voluntary and involuntary. So obviously a voluntary action is like, I want to go pick up that box on the floor. So you take your whole body up, you walk over, and you pick up that box. An involuntary action is like breathing, blinking your eyes, something like that, or kind of just sudden, maybe even sort of a reflex, like you're watching a sad movie and you cry during it. So there is this this thought, the ideomotor effect. A gentleman named William B. Carpenter in 1852, he actually came up with this theory that people, they can, think about an action and not physically want to do that action, but just kind of as a reflex, as thinking about it, something happens.
Yeah, tiny movements, subtle movements.
Little tiny movement, yeah. So they don't necessarily, it's, as far as they're concerned, it's involuntary. They're not meaning to do anything, and as far as they know, they're not doing anything. So in the case of a Ouija board, you have your fingers on the planchette, and you're not thinking you're moving it. You don't want to move it. In your brain, you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Is it going to move? Is it not going to move? Is it going to move? It's not going to move. And your brain's not sending the signals to your hands to move anything. However, just the thought of the planchette moving is enough for you to subconsciously move the planchette.
And it tends to go with whatever the expectation is.
Right.
So if you're thinking you're using this board to communicate with a ghost, and then you ask, are there any spirits present?
Yes.
It's going to go to yes. But, funny enough, if you blindfold the subjects, actually Penn and Teller's Bullshit did a great episode about Ouija boards.
Yeah.
I forget which season it was in, but it was one of the early ones. They blindfolded people, and then, without telling them, turned the board around. Well, they blindfolded people, and people were still able to use the board correctly.
Yeah.
But then, in another trial, they blindfolded them and didn't tell them that they moved the board. But they turned the board upside down. And it was complete and utter nonsense. But people were still moving it to where they thought yes and no were, and saying yes and no once they had moved it in whatever direction it was. There's also another great video by Darren Brown, who's a famous British debunker and mentalist, but he does not claim any supernatural abilities. He's admitting this is all tricks, although he's very good at it. He has a video that you can look up on YouTube. I'll post it on spookyasshit.com, and it's called Ouija Board Revealed, I believe.
Okay.
I'll have to double check that, but anyway, go to spookyas.com and I'll post the video there anyway. But they actually show you exactly how the ideomotor effect works, and the ideomotor response is also how things like pendulums work. Most people are probably more familiar with using the pendulum like it as maybe a baby shower game where you hold it over a pregnant woman's belly and she holds it, and it's like, oh, is it going to be a boy or a girl? I forget which is which.
If it goes north to south, it's one way. If it goes east to west, it's the other one.
Yeah, so it's not really telling you what the sex of the baby is, but it is possibly telling you what the mother hopes it is.
Yeah, right.
So, Tom.
Eric.
Should we head over to that Ouija board?
Yeah.
and try to make contact. We're going to have to hold our microphones as we do it.
Okay, yeah, we could do that.
Now, most shows, what's so funny is even skeptics and people that do these kinds of shows and everything, they'll be like, oh, yeah, I just don't really fuck with the Ouija board.
Yeah.
But Tom and I are confident in our demonology. So here we are. We are at the table now.
All right.
And I guess we'll have to do it. Most of the videos, like, they just do 2 fingers. So and you have to spin it around a few times.
Wake up the spirits.
Yeah. Hey, spirits, how's it going? Only friendly spirits, please.
Yeah.
No demons. Demons, you can come. Just make sure you leave when you.
Yeah, you get the back.
You
get the back seat. Though.
Okay. Actually, you know who I want to talk to?
Who?
Charles Kennard.
Charlie.
Charles Kennard.
Come on, baby.
Come forward. Come forward.
You were screwed
All
when
right.
your time on this earth.
All right, Charles Kennard, are you here? Now, according to the message on the back of the box, it could take 1 to 5 minutes to get a response. How about this? Charles Kennard or any spirit? Is there any spirit there, but preferably Charles Kennard? Don't move it. I will say I do feel it moving.
It is moving.
I am not moving it. Not intentionally. My fingers are lightly touching the top. This might be a bust. It does seem to be moving, but not far enough to be like, oh, it's...
It's thinking. The spirits are thinking.
You're definitely moving it. Your side's moving a lot more than mine.
I got a shaky wrist.
Now I moved it because I laughed. We're stuck on the S, but that's where we started from. The spirit didn't put it there.
Yeah, we're mid-board.
Yeah. We're looking for a yes or no answer.
Spirit, you here?
Charles Kennard, we want to vindicate you. So please come forward. But if not him, another nice spirit will do.
We want to give you the fair interview to say what a jerk William Fuld was.
We might be the only podcast
To ever...
trying to interview Charles Kennard.
I think you're right. Charles, this is your moment. You've been waiting 150...
And look at this board. It says William Fuld on the board and on the planchette.
Oh, man, I didn't even realize.
And this board was made like 2013, it says.
Yeah.
So he's still got his name all over shit.
Yeah, he is...
And he wasn't even one of the original dudes.
He's making you look silly, dude.
Come on, Charlie.
Oh, come on. Put William in his place. All right.
I think it's a bust.
I'll tell you what, Charles Kennard. If you think William Fuld is an ass clown, please push the planchette towards his name. Oh, apparently you're totally okay.
All right. I think we're going to have to do... I mean, it did say to wait possibly 5 minutes. And maybe we're just not following the rules exactly. But I think we'll declare this a bust.
I think so.
Even our idiot motors weren't strong enough.
No, we tried.
To move it.
We tried. Well, Charlie...
And again, I was warned by a witch just about 2 hours ago not to do this.
Yeah.
And
Do you
this
know
is the response.
You're gonna...
So let's say goodbye. We're going to move the planchette to goodbye and say, any spirits that did enter, it's time for you to leave.
I got to touch it
Yeah.
just so they leave with... I don't want them coming with me.
Now I'm making my witch friend happy.
Yep.
You are not, I don't know what you're supposed to say, but you are not welcome here. And in the name of the Lord Jesus,
And the Father,
be gone.
and the Son, and the Holy Spirit,
Yep.
peace be with you.
And also with you.
It's with your spirit now. Get with it. Yeah, it's been real.
All right. Well, I guess that'll do it for this season 2 premiere of Spooky Ass Shit.
Ooh.
Don't forget to check out the website for all the goodies we've talked about. For all the goodies that we've talked about. And go ahead and leave that feedback. We love to hear from you. And we read out some really nice positive things today. And if we get more from you guys, we'll read those out too. Go ahead, leave them on iTunes or wherever you listen to the show. Write in to me. Friend me on Facebook. I'm trying to do more with the Twitter and the Instagram too.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'm going to take some behind the scenes pictures before you leave. Just to have more kind of stuff to share. I
Yeah,
guess.
makes sense.
Something different instead of just posting like the show's available.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Show's
Yeah, yeah.
available.
Yeah.
Show's available. So anyway, So look forward to that stuff, guys. At Spooky Ass Shit at Twitter, at Spooky Ass Shit on Instagram, Facebook.com/SpookyAS, and of course, SpookyAS.com. Until next time, don't be afraid.